website webinar on mobility for the building trades. I'm Jerry Friedman, Colden Company's Senior Sales Associate, and I'm with Bill Polymenakis, our Vice President, who will be presenting. We do have a lot of material to cover today, so we will hold questions until the end, but please type them into the chat bar, the question and answer bar at the top of the screen. We also will make a recording of this available to attendees. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bill to get us rolling. Bill, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. As Jerry mentioned, my name is Bill Polymenakis. I'm Vice President with Colden Company. I've been with Colden Company for about 6 years and have worked in IT for about 25 years. Many years of that actually spent managing construction IT. And so we're going to talk about mobile technology for the building trades in this webinar, and a particular focus on mobile technologies as a whole, not just specifically to building trades, but mobile strategy, because there's a lot more to mobile than just picking an application or picking a device. So the first thing we want to talk about is, why does mobility matter? And like a lot of things, it comes down to money. And for the building trades, mobile technology increases productivity on the job site and in the back office, which improves profit margins. I mentioned that I spent a lot of time doing construction IT management, and I was doing some work for a 90-year-old construction company based out of Chicago. And one of the biggest issues that was faced in terms of productivity and, frankly, labor cost was what we were calling windshield time. That's the time that was spent just strictly moving paper from the job site to the office or vice versa. Time that was spent in a car, non-productive, but paying employees to do that time. So at the time, the solutions that we had available to us were things like cellular modems and Citrix in order to do terminal computing, and that allowed them to have access to Windows desktops in the field, and even some time solutions using old Nextel phones. So I'm dating myself there. You can see that the solutions in play were much older at that point. And things have just come a long way since then. And I think you'll agree when we talk about some of the solutions available, or some solutions you've probably already seen, how much things have changed dramatically in that time frame. So something you should remember is that mobility is not a fad. Tablets and similar devices are expected to outsell standard PCs by 2017, according to IC Insights. And typically, the 25% of SMBs that use, SMBs being small and medium businesses, that use mobile services more intensively see their revenues growing up to 2 times faster and add jobs up to 8 times faster than their peers. So you'll often hear the phrase post-PC era, and that's basically what this is getting to. We are moving into a post-PC era where the technologies and the tools that are being used by your employees are not traditional PCs. They're mobile devices or hybrid devices of some kind. So let's talk about productivity. The vast majority of decision makers at construction, manufacturing, and distribution firms believe that mobile technology is positively affecting their productivity, according to a survey by business management software and services specialist Sage North America, who you may know from Timberline, which many of you probably use. And something to keep in mind is that if this isn't you, it's probably your competitors, because this was a survey conducted by eWeek, a well-known trade magazine, as recently as 2013, and I'm guaranteeing you that's only changed since then. So for your competitors, this is not only allowing them to be more productive, it's allowing them to make more money and reduce their costs or price. So the ability to share data between the field and the back office is essential to control costs, save time, and allows field and office personnel to collaborate in real time to make better decisions. This goes back to that windshield time element that I was talking about, time spent just strictly moving paper back and forth. Obviously, that is anything but real time, and real time is key, because with paper, all decisions are made after the fact. Issues aren't uncovered until they've already become problems on the job site. Now, most construction jobs, profit and loss is made in the field, not in the back office. So getting that information from the field to the back office in a more timely fashion is critical. Let's talk about data flow. And mobility solutions allow you to do all kinds of things in terms of getting your data to and from the field or the job site more rapidly. They allow for efficient time card reporting, having plans and contracts available anywhere, which, aside from anytime, anywhere availability, can avoid having to carry around enormous plan books or enormous sets of plans. You can actually save quite a bit of money on printing plans as well, which anybody who's done it knows is a very costly endeavor. You can attach photos and videos to field reports. Construction is very photo heavy, and being able to attach those photos directly to the field reports instead of just having a file share full of photos is very, very key. Obviously reducing travel time and expenses, which we were alluding to with the travel or the windshield time situation. You reduce data entry and redundancy for the back office staff. So you're getting that data in there once. You're not having somebody rekey it. And then managing equipment and inventory, you can actually see where your tools are at any given time and also assign them to the correct job by cost code or any other methods. It's estimated that 90% of all cost overruns on construction projects are caused by labor issues. With multiple teams handling different aspects of the job, such as tracking hours worked and accurately putting the data into your construction accounting system, that can be plagued with errors. So being able to get that data in there once and correctly is very, very important to being able to get your mobility solution and your data flow working better for your business. The data can be transmitted at the speed of light, making physical trips to the shop to pick up and drop off work assignments, log status information, etc., completely obsolete. So and then we talk about the flexibility, which also goes down to the bottom line. You have faster access to your data, which your project managers would absolutely love because they can address job issues before they become crises. Most applications can be accessed on a variety of platforms and devices, Windows laptops, iPads, Android tablets. Most of these applications that are being developed, especially the ones that you really should give your attention to, are not tied to a particular platform. That gives you more flexibility in terms of controlling your costs and your deployment. Most solutions can be configured for your needs. Very few of these solutions come out of the box with a one-size-fits-all mentality. And then devices can be remotely managed for security and productivity. We're going to talk about that a lot more because that should be a very important part of your mobile strategy, being able to manage those devices. So just a little comical bit in here with the early use of tablets. You can see right here Moses coming down from the mount, but this is what we use tablets for today. If folks out on the job site carrying that one slim piece of technology instead of having to carry 30 pounds of paper. Now, let me give you a taste in the next couple of slides, a very high-level overview of a couple of key mobile workforce management options. And these are all very feature-rich solutions that really need to be scoped with an expert to suit your business and your business needs, your back-end systems. So I wanted to give you a taste of some of the options that are available from some of the top-tier players. One is called Field Connect. Field Connect is actually, they play with iOS and Android devices. They play with most of the key enterprise back-end systems, construction ERP, enterprise resource planning systems. So the software that drives your organization's business processes doesn't play alone. You have to remember that. And it's especially true of enterprise software, whether you're using Timberline Office, Viewpoint, Dexter Cheney, or even something as simple as QuickBooks. It's tied into any number of other applications and systems. So your workforce management software needs to play well with that as well, and with your existing technology infrastructure. So consider that most integrations take months or even years to complete, and they're often expensive, excruciating undertakings. I could speak to that from experience in trying to tie field solutions into back-end ERP systems. So the nice thing about something like Field Connect is that it seamlessly integrates into Microsoft Dynamics. Sage 300 construction and real estate, or trade specialty, which is formerly Sage Timberline. Viewpoint construction software is V6 accounting software. Dexter Cheney. And it captures real-time info in the field and communicates that to your dispatcher or back to the office. So you can boost technician productivity by electronically delivering and receiving service calls on iPads, Android tablets, smartphones, and laptops. That goes back to the point I mentioned before, which is having cross-platform compatibility is important, because you don't want something to tie you into a particular solution and tie you into a certain cost structure by associating you with only, say, iPads. You can jumpstart revenue growth with electronic lead tracking and quoting from the field with Field Connect. You can renew maintenance contracts with web portals. So discard the filing cabinet and all the stacks of paper that go along with those maintenance contracts and electronic service documentation. You can know with certainty that your field payroll represents actual time worked. So you don't have to worry about all the complexities that come with payroll processing in terms of figuring out start times, end times, travel times. You're actually getting that data in real time. So with Field Connect Mobile Workforce Solutions, specialty contracting companies see an immediate boost in jobs performed, maximizing cash flow and revenue. And we can get you in touch with somebody to talk in more detail about Field Connect if you'd like. Another very good solution is MobileLogix. MobileLogix has time tracking and payroll. They enable in-the-field inventory, equipment management, time tracking, GPS tracking for fleet tracking, job scheduling, technician scheduling. So your technicians can enter their timesheets on the go with applications for iPhone and BlackBerry natively, but the nice thing about MobileLogix is it also has a web browser component, which makes it even more flexible. The mobile web browser component means that any device that's running a modern mobile web browser can access the MobileLogix application if you don't have a native application. So you're not limited at all in that respect. With MobileLogix, you can track time worked by project, phase, and or task, add notes and descriptions, add photos, allow time tracking to be distinguished by billable and non-billable time. You can integrate with estimates and finance and scheduling software such as Primavera's P6 for scheduling, SAP and Oracle if you really deal with some of the higher end systems. From some of the estimating systems, you can tie into MC squared ICE, you can tie into hard dollar. Basically, it's a very flexible system for taking data from the field in your mobile technician's hands or in your sales staff's hands and getting it back into your ERP system. And again, as with Field Connect, we have partnered with specialists who can actually help you get much more detail and get an implementation of MobileLogix going for you. So, and if you're tied into a particular system and you're happy with the vendor, like for example, Timberline, Sage, and Viewpoint, most of these vendors have some solution that actually works with their product specifically. So if you're not concerned about being tied into a particular vendor, Timberline has Equential, which is their mobile component. Viewpoint has Viewpoint for mobile and Pro Contractor. Then, of course, there's the next level, which is building your own solution. We have customers who have done build your own, and it works well if you're willing to put the investment of time and money into it. Now, BYO comes down to the ultimate question, build or buy, which is any IT development project, the first question you have to ask. Buy means you have to rely on a vendor and support infrastructure, which can be good and bad. Build means you have to deal with changes, feature requests, back-end system changes, etc. on your own. Back-end system changes can be a key one because when, say, Viewpoint updates their database, they're not going to be making sure your mobile application is up to date. You have to do that. So before you install a Viewpoint update, you need to make sure that there's not any changes in there that are going to cause problems for your mobile solution. So truthfully, build is rarely used by SMBs because it becomes a very unpredictable cost, which most business owners don't like. So we've talked about a lot of good mobile workforce management solutions. There are tons of solutions out there that can help your business, but let's not put the proverbial cart before the horse. We need to take a step back and help you avoid the mistakes that many businesses make when starting a mobility project. We're not saying this from anything except for pure experience. We've seen it happen many times. So there are a lot of key things to consider. What operating system are you going to use? You really don't face that choice a lot when you're dealing with PCs because we use Windows. Most of us use Windows. You'll see some Macs here and there, but that makes that choice easy. With mobile, it's a lot more complicated. What devices will you use? Will you provide devices, or will employees bring in their own devices? Have you considered the security of the devices and what your company policy is regarding mobile devices? These are all questions you need to consider, and they're questions that we'll address in the coming slides. So we'll start with the one that has almost become synonymous with mobile, smartphones and tablets, which is Apple's iOS. Apple's mobile operating system for the iPhone, iPod Touch, iPad, Apple TV, and similar devices is called iOS. It was originally called iPhone OS, but Apple renamed it in 2010 to reflect the operating system's evolving support for additional devices from Apple. So Apple's devices represent a smaller market share than you probably think. It's about 19.7% as of the fourth quarter of 2014. They're very popular, but Apple does a great job of managing their business, so while they have a lower end of the market share, they actually have the majority of the profits, which if anybody watches the Apple stock price, you know very well how well they're doing. So the current devices, all of which you can actually see on this slide, are from left to right, the iPad Mini 3, the iPhone 6, the iPhone 6 Plus, and the Apple iPad Air 2. So all these platforms we're going to discuss have pros and cons, and let's start with the iOS pros, simplicity. Apple's built an empire on making products that are easy to use and intuitive. Your training costs and your support costs are minimal. And they're nice devices. They're just very, very simple to use, very locked down. They have a massive app ecosystem and developer support. They specifically have a distinct advantage for tablet apps, while on the smartphones, popular apps are usually available for both platforms. But for tablet apps, you really have an advantage to Apple because they courted developers early and they gave them the tools to succeed. The interface is locked down. That's actually good from a support standpoint because there's limited options for customization of home screens, only rows of app icons are allowed. No third-party apps are pre-installed by the wireless carrier. Users can only install apps from the App Store, no side loading of apps as it's called. And that reduces your training costs and support costs because the devices are consistent. Southwest Airlines was famous for reducing their maintenance costs by having a fleet of identical planes when they first started out, because that meant they didn't have to worry about supporting 14 different planes, having parts for them, having technicians trained on them. They knew what they were supporting out of the gate. Software upgrades is a key advantage for iOS because Apple offers direct software upgrades to all devices that have the hardware capable of handling the software. So devices stay current with software features for, let's say, roughly 2 to 3 years. iOS has industry-leading privacy controls so that users have access to what private information they're going to allow apps to have access to, such as contacts and location. And of course, Apple has industry-leading hardware quality. Their devices are built to last. But iOS has cons as well. There is a limited device selection because iOS devices come only from Apple, period. There's no third-party market for varying hardware types, lower-cost devices, etc. Now, what is a pro is also a con. The massive app ecosystem can actually be a con as well. There are millions of apps, and sometimes finding the app you need for a particular use case can be difficult. For example, there's hundreds of applications that allow you to do various things with PDF documents. Maybe you need to just read them. Maybe you want to mark them up. Maybe you want to read encrypted documents. You have to search through a library of apps to figure out which app is actually the one that does what you need. And finally, there is less flexibility for developers. So Apple keeps tighter control over what application developers can and can't do within iOS. So developers have to work with more restrictions. So that can limit some useful apps like file browsers or interface enhancements, but again, arguably leads to improved stability, security, and supportability. So let's move on to Google's Android operating system. So Android's based on, to get a little technical for a minute, it's based on the Linux kernel, which is Unix. That's developed by Google. The Android operating system source code is released by Google under licenses to many different Android device manufacturers. So what that means is you have a variety of different device types to choose from. And not just mobile devices. Android is used on TV set-top boxes and in cars. The Android's really popular with technology companies which require a ready-made, low-cost, and customizable operating system for high-tech devices. So going back to the market share numbers, just to give you an idea of how much of a market share Android actually has, as of fourth quarter of 2014, they had 76.6% of the mobile market. And just to give you an idea of the variety of devices that we're talking about, from left to right here, we're looking at the Nexus 6. We have the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 tablet. Then we have the Samsung Galaxy S6 phone. We have the Samsung Note 4 smartphone, which you can see with the S Pen stylus. The HTC One M9, the Sony Xperia Z3, and the Google Nexus 9 tablet. So, kind of going to the point I was saying, you have multiple manufacturers, multiple device sizes, you have small screen phones, you have large screen phablets as they're called. The Nexus 6 on the far left actually has a 6-inch screen, while the Sony Xperia Z3 has a 4.9-inch screen. There's a wide variety of devices. So there's pros and cons. Android Pros, just like the Apple App Store, has a massive app ecosystem. There's millions of apps, and most major developers are either doing a day-and-date release of their iOS apps on Android, or they're going Android first now, just simply because of the market share numbers. There's a massive device ecosystem. That because due to Android's open nature, and it runs on an enormous number of devices at varying price points, screen sizes, and hardware capabilities, you have any number of manufacturers jumping into the fray. There are even ruggedized devices available for extreme conditions, such as job sites. There's a highly customizable user experience. So the home screen can be customized with not just app icons, but you can throw in widgets, which give you quick, glanceable information. Google has fewer restrictions than Apple on what kinds of apps it allows in its Play Store, so you may even have applications that change the user experience or allow you to lock it down as a business if you want more control over it. You can also choose to install Android apps from places other than the Google Play Store, which is good sometimes for businesses who want to install apps that you don't want to send through the entire approval process. You just want to develop something or work with a developer to have something just for yourself. There is greater flexibility for developers. The open source origins of Android means that developers can tinker with deeper parts of the system and make things their own. And there's much lower cost hardware because the open source licensing, again, of Android, you have varying providers, varying manufacturers coming in with different devices at different price points, but also at different quality. So, going to the cons here, again, massive app ecosystem. Just like with iOS, sometimes it's hard to find the application that you want. Application quality can be a problem with Android. Because Google is less restrictive than Apple in terms of what it allows into the App Store, you do sometimes get applications that are a bit questionable in terms of quality, and there have even been cases where malware has been allowed into the Google Play Store. Google has become much better at finding these applications before they get distributed. greater flexibility for developers is actually a pro and a con, going back to this point on application quality, because frankly, not all developers are good developers. So the flexibility in Android can result in applications that decrease the stability of your device, impact battery life, or, as I mentioned, worst case, install malware or enable malware. A con is definitely the fact that there can be extreme variations in the user experience. Manufacturers will take Android and they'll customize it with skins and proprietary applications. If you buy a Samsung phone or a Motorola phone or a Sony phone or an HTC phone, they're all running Android, but they're all going to look very different. So this can lead to increased support costs since every user's needs might be different. If you want to set up email on a user's Samsung phone, you may know the process and you may have a Samsung phone of your own, but then somebody comes in with an HTC phone and setting up your email is going to be different. Software upgrades is actually a very important con for Android, and that comes down to security. So with the exception of the Nexus devices, which you buy directly from Google or from carriers that Google has partnered with, Android updates are delivered to the manufacturer, who then customize the code for their devices, who then deliver the updates to the carriers, who validate it, and then deliver over-the-air updates to users. So you can see there's multiple steps in the process. And let's say that there's a security vulnerability discovered in a version of Android. Well, it could be months or even never before your device receives an update. Because of this long process, carriers and manufacturers are pretty loath to support Android devices with new operating system updates outside of about a 2-year period. And again, going back to the variability of the Android ecosystem, device quality becomes a problem. There are some very high quality Android flagship devices, but because of the open nature of it, there's also some very low cost devices, and not just low in cost, but low in quality. So I wouldn't recommend the $99 Android tablet you can buy from Walgreens for your business. So now we're going to move on to Windows, which is a more complicated mobile topic than you might think. We're actually going to break this topic into 2 subjects because they arguably have the widest range of devices under the Windows brand and the most volatility in their mobile portfolio. Microsoft has been trying to build a bridge between desktop and mobile and trying to find a stable foothold in the mobile market for a long time. And since the experiences are quite different, as I mentioned, we'll discuss Windows Phone, or what is now going to again be called Windows Mobile, and traditional Windows platforms separately. And we'll be honest with you here. Buying into a Windows Phone 8 device right now would really not be a very good business decision. They, as of Q4 of 2014, had a 2.8% market share. So there's not a lot of attention to the platform right now, and Microsoft themselves are heavily revamping the platform for Windows 10. So Windows Phone is a family of operating systems developed by Microsoft for smartphones, and it's the replacement successor to Windows Mobile. And Windows Phone was the first Microsoft device to feature the new user interface derived from Metro, which, depending on who you read, is called Modern UI, Microsoft Design Language, Windows Store Apps, Windows Apps. It's no longer officially called Metro because of a trademark dispute. So we'll just call it Modern UI or Windows Apps. So Windows 8 and Windows RT, which has been since discontinued, prominently feature that modern UI in a hybrid tablet form. And Microsoft's moving back to the Windows Mobile branding for formerly Windows 10 for phones and small tablets, where the mobile OS will be called Windows 10 Mobile. Are you confused yet? So obviously Microsoft's mobile strategy is complex and evolving, but it's increasingly revolving around apps and services for all platforms, which is mobile first and cloud first. Microsoft wants customers on Office 365 and other cloud services. So they're becoming more flexible in terms of delivering their applications and services like Office to varying devices. So I'm going to quickly go through Windows Phone pros and cons. Windows Phone is very stable and it's very simple. It's known for both. The simplicity and stability of the devices are praised by pretty much every reviewer and every user. Performance is excellent. Devices are very lag-free, and they have a very customizable user experience with tiles, the Windows 8 tiles that you might be familiar for on the home screen, which can present information at a glance, sort of a cross between the Apple iOS home screen and Android widgets. On the con side, the app ecosystem is minuscule. Yeah, they have a very small market share, and developers just aren't flocking to develop Windows Phone applications. If they are developed, they're usually developed several cycles after their iOS and Android counterparts. Now, Microsoft is working to allow easy porting of Android and iOS apps to Windows Phone in the Windows 10 for mobile timeframe. There's a very limited device selection outside of Nokia, which Microsoft purchased for $7 billion in 2014. And as I mentioned, the platform's in transition, with Windows 10 on the horizon and Microsoft releasing Windows 10 for mobile for some existing devices. That's a key qualifier. And as yet unreleased devices, which take advantage of the full Windows 10 system's power, Windows Phone 8 is just not a good bet at this time. So now let's talk about Windows, because Windows itself is a powerful mobile platform. And we're not just talking laptops here. We're talking about hybrid devices such as the Microsoft Surface Pro 3 or the Dell Venue 11 Pro. Sony has devices, HP has devices which are tablets and laptops. So the biggest pro is it's a Windows PC. Your existing Windows software, systems, services, investments will still work with it. Your Windows-based servers and processes can be seamlessly extended to mobile. There's a massive device ecosystem because you're dealing with all the traditional PC manufacturers who are now getting into the mobile space. So you can have the Surface Pro 3, the Surface 3, the Dell Venue Pro, the Lenovo Yoga, to wall-mount all-in-one touch PCs, to Perceptive Pixel 80-inch wall-mounted whiteboards. You could have Windows devices that suit any kind of need. That last one would not be very mobile, though. So you can find the device to fit your budget and your purpose. Obviously, huge developer community. There's already an enormous developer community for Windows because it's the #1 application development platform and has more than 1 billion devices worldwide. And less training. Users already know how to use Windows, and frankly, in the case of Windows tablets, if you're using traditional VPNs, you can just have your users segue very easily into using a Windows mobile device or a Windows device. Cons, it's a Windows PC. Yeah, it needs maintenance, monthly patching, etc. It's susceptible to malware. Your touch support is somewhat limited because application developers haven't fully embraced the Windows modern UI. So if you're using desktop applications on a tablet, you're going to find that what we call the touch targets, like your menus and your buttons, are just not going to be designed very well for large fingers and small screens. And the devices tend to be more expensive. A well-equipped Surface Pro 3 is probably about the price of 2 reasonable laptops. It's a very different kind of device and a much more flexible device, but you need to be willing to make that investment. So now you're thinking which device you want to pick, but now we need to figure out how to get connectivity to the job site, because otherwise they're just disconnected devices and you can't do real-time communication unless you have a data connection. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can bring your own network. Cellular data devices such as USB modems you plug directly into a device, or MiFis, which work well for iPads and Android tablets which don't have that USB port, are great. MiFis in particular are cellular data devices which project a Wi-Fi signal, and you make your own little private Wi-Fi network. Cradlepoint, and most of those devices you can actually get from your wireless carrier with your existing wireless plan for the business. Cradlepoint is a business that's specifically designed around these bring your own network type scenarios. They specialize in failover, mobile to mobile, Internet of Things, application specific transportation, and various other businesses that require mobile connectivity in sort of non-traditional form factors. They have award-winning 3G, 4G, LTE, basically high-speed wireless broadband devices which are purpose-built for distributed enterprises. They can be installed in vehicles, they can be installed at job sites, they can be installed as failover to existing setups. They're very flexible. Wireless bridges are great because if you have a physical data connection delivered to, say, a job trailer, so you have Comcast cable coming into your job trailer, wireless bridges can allow you to extend high bandwidth data connections via line of sight to multiple other locations. So you can pay for one wire, one physical connection, but be able to extend it over line of sight over a good distance. VPN, we can do site-to-site VPN. So for example, if you had that job site trailer, we could have a site-to-site VPN between a firewall at that trailer and your home office, so that trailer just becomes a extension of your main office. And then client VPNs, whether you're using an Android device or a Windows device, iOS, any of these devices, there are VPN clients available for most major types of firewalls. Satellite we throw on here because it is an option, but I would say it's a last resort option. If you're really in a position where you have no possibility of connectivity, no good cellular signal, no good options in terms of bringing a wired connection in, satellite connections tend to be slower, higher latency, and much more costly, but they are an option. So you've got a connection. What about bringing data to the job site, your business data? So Enterprise Cloud File Sync is a great way of doing it, basically extending your file server into the cloud and getting that data down to mobile devices or remote job sites. So if you think I'm talking about Dropbox, I'm definitely not. We don't recommend Dropbox for businesses because it's not really designed for businesses and businesses that need control and security in mind. So with the influx of online file sharing solutions, distributing information has become easier than ever. And as a result, it's easier for information to fall into the wrong hands, intentionally or unintentionally. The use of something like Dropbox can open the door to company data being synced without your approval across personal devices. So we recommend systems that actually tie into your existing infrastructure or can be an infrastructure in and of themselves so that you can secure your data. Mobile VPN, again, is a way of bringing data to the job site by tying your devices or a location directly into your home office system and allowing users to connect to Windows file shares, where all of your data may already reside, or maybe you're tying into SharePoint in the cloud or on-premise. You can tie into those systems. Then there's offline files, which is a traditional Windows method. You know, we go back to the old ways of doing things where you just have an offline cache of files that users use while they're disconnected. When they get back to the office, their offline changes will sync, and when they're in the office, any changes that were made on the server will sync down to their mobile device. There's a lot of different ways to get the data out into the field. So now we're going to get into the real crux of what I want to explain to you, which is that we've talked about a lot of different kinds of devices, how to get connectivity, how to get your data, but now we need to talk about the most important part, how you secure and manage all those data and devices. So don't be surprised if you soon have more devices accessing your network than you do PCs, and you might even be there already. So as you can see from this little chart, in 2014, the number of mobile phones will exceed the number, did exceed, I should say, the number of people on the planet. And going to the far end, mobile devices and the apps we rely on are under attack. 97% and 87% of the top paid Android and iOS apps, respectively, have been hacked. Something to keep in mind, and this goes back to, say, my Dropbox example. Criminals attack the weakest link. So if somebody's outside of the office and they want to get access to your network may have a firewall, an intrusion prevention system to detect suspicious behavior, antivirus, maybe even data encryption. Well, that's pretty hard for a cyber criminal to penetrate. But you've got a mobile employee with a laptop or a smartphone or a tablet, which has a direct line into your data and has not only your data, but your unencrypted data. Well, a cyber criminal is going to take that easier path in and hack that device. So you really need to think about what you're going to do with this proliferation of mobile devices, especially devices that you can't control. So let's talk about ownership models. There's two different ownership models. There's what we'll call COD and BYOD. There's company-owned device and bring your own device. Company-owned device is exactly what it sounds like. It's the most restrictive model where the business buys the device and locks it down tight. And employees hate this model because it means they carry two phones more often than not, because they want a phone they can play with, and they can't play with that company-owned device because it's locked down tight. BYOD, bring your own device, is you may hear sometimes referred to as the consumerization of IT, where employees are demanding more control of the technology they use to work, and they bring their own devices in. So businesses can't ignore BYOD. They cannot. Employees may bypass corporate policy and use shadow technology that can compromise information security and intellectual property if you're ignoring BYOD. Because more than likely, employees are going to use it if they can. So not only do you need to have some sort of a policy around this, you also need to have some method of controlling that. And just as a discussion point, I threw in a couple of hybrid device models here as well. There's choose your own device, which is similar to BYOD, but employees can only use devices and applications from an approved list provided by the employer in an approved way. So it gives you a little more control, but it gives the employee a little more flexibility. Corporate liable, employee owned, or CLIO. Employees own the devices, but the employer is responsible or liable to pay the service costs. Then one that's becoming a lot more popular is COPE, corporate owned, personally enabled, which is COPE enables personal use of company devices for personal activities like social sites, emails, calls, and etc. The employers provide employees with devices and applications, and the company maintains ownership, but employees can still install some applications on there outside of a controlled business container. So let's talk about BYOD and some of the challenges, because it is the most popular model. So it presents a contradiction, really. It would appear to release employers from expenses associated with providing and managing devices and applications, but it really doesn't. An organization called TEMIA, the Telecom Expense Management Industry Association, their members have found that for clients that implement BYOD, 69% report that enterprise costs for mobile services are either rising or about the same. So you're not getting a savings. So for BYOD, some of the biggest problems you have in terms of challenges for security, employee privacy, employee productivity is that, let's think about it from a support standpoint. Maybe the problem is the employee's iPhone 3GS running iOS 4. Maybe it's the fact that the employee is very budget-friendly ZTE Grand X on Cricket Wireless. They just can't get it to work with their email. Maybe your techie employee imported a Xiaomi Mi 4 and imported it unlocked and is having trouble getting it to run with a prepaid SIM card. Yeah, it may sound like I'm making things up here, but every single one of those things I just mentioned is an actual phone. And with BYOD, you open up your network to having those devices introduced and those challenges introduced. So for all the same reasons I just mentioned, you're going to have a bit higher support costs because your support staff is now going to have to figure out, oh, okay, what's this phone and how do I get it to work? So privacy and legal is key. You want to manage the devices, and are your employees letting you know their location, or what apps they have installed, or what calls and messages they've received? It's important that you manage these devices while respecting your employee privacy, and frankly, it may not only be important, it may be legally required of you. So internal politics, for the exact reasons I just mentioned, create an environment where it's difficult to properly address BYOD challenges because you may have privacy policies, you may have employee-enabled policies or employee empowerment policies, which allow employees to have a lot more flexibility, and something like a BYOD policy may just not mix into that. So if you adopt BYOD, just keep in mind control is necessary, but an all-or-nothing approach is impossible. So, telling employees that they can't play Angry Birds on their personal device just won't fly. Sorry for the bad pun. So mobile policy is really key here. If you implement BYOD, you must, and I can't stress that enough, you must have a written mobile device policy that's signed by each employee that wants to access business resources with their mobile device. And you should have a written policy, frankly, regardless of which model you adopt. But it's extremely important for BYOD due to privacy and legal exposures, because you're allowing a personal device to connect to your network and access your data. So, if you adopt BYOD, Mobile Device Management, or MDM, sometimes referred to as EMM, Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions, can manage company-owned device and bring your own device policies through automation. And just keep in mind that continually changing consumer technology requires employers to adopt programs to reflect the fact that managing BYOD is not a one-time job, and it never will be, because you'll start to hate the time when Samsung comes out with their big device announcements, because it means an influx of new devices to manage. So let me talk about the different kinds of mobile device management solutions. I'm going to give two different levels, basically. We have basic and we have advanced. For basic MDM, the first thing you should look for is multiple OS support. Yes, there are solutions like Apple's OS X Profile Manager, Android for work. But any solution like that, certainly if you're doing BYOD, is really difficult to work with because you're tying yourself into a particular platform. If you're doing BYOD, assume that your employees are going to bring different devices into your network. So multiple OS support is very key. Different COD and BYOD policies are key as well, because you want to be able to set different limitations or collect different data depending on whether that device is COD and more locked down, or BYOD and more flexible. And that again goes back to the issue of privacy and legal liability. You don't want to collect, or perhaps you should not legally collect, employee location information while they're off hours. So some of the security functions that even a basic MDM platform should offer you are things like setting a passcode policy. Requires a certain number of characters, has to be changed every so many days. The ability for you to set the passcode remotely. So if an employee says, can't remember my passcode, you can issue a command to the device to reset it and get them back and productive again. Locking the device remotely is key as well. If an employee loses the device, but they're sure it's in the couch cushion, just lock the device until they find it, just in case. And a full remote wipe is key as well. This one you need to be careful with, because a full device wipe actually, a full remote wipe actually means that, a full wipe. So to give you an example here, if you're using Exchange email and you have mobile devices connected, Exchange provides the ability to do a device wipe. It's a very, very basic MDM solution. There's a problem. If you wipe the device from Exchange, you're not wiping your Exchange email off that device, you're wiping the employee's own device, the entire device. So you may think you're just pulling company email and contacts off that device, but you're actually erasing their vacation photos and their saved games as well. In some cases, if you happen to do business internationally, in some EU countries, it's actually illegal for businesses to wipe employee phones. So you have to be very, very careful with these remote wipes unless you know exactly what you're wiping. And a good mobile device management solution will allow you to choose. Carrying on, just some quick points. You can get inventory and usage data, locate devices on maps in case they're lost, or if you need to do fleet tracking or field tracking of some kind. Look at storage uses in case you need to decide if you have enough space to deploy mobile applications. And for tracking your cellular service and your cellular costs, you can do call and message history and mobile data usage. So you can do a report on mobile data usage across a fleet of devices to determine whether or not you have the most optimized plan for what you're paying your carrier. You can impose device restrictions for most good mobile device management solutions. For example, you may be able to allow or disallow access to the camera, in-app purchases, app stores, things like that. And you can pre-configure email and networks. So when your employees get their device, you can push out an email profile so that your employees are ready to go right out of the gate. So here's a chart of a very basic MDM solution which Colden Company can provide you to manage your mobile devices. Just a little chart here which we can provide to you if you'd like. But you can see we have different levels of support for the different operating systems, Apple, Android, and Windows Phone, and a variety of different features that we can offer. So I'm going to take it now to the next level, which is advanced mobile device management. Advanced mobile device management can do things like enforce pre-enrollment requirements, disallow any devices that are jailbroken or rooted, require encryption on the device, create and distribute a customized acceptable use policy or a end-user license agreement that employees must accept prior to enrollment. You still get your hardware and application inventory, but you may get a little more information out of a device like this as well. OS configuration management, you can decide what employees are allowed to do or not allowed to do in terms of customizing Android, for example, or apps they can install, or features they can use within app stores. And then advanced security, you can set up compliance rules to notify users and or administrators if an enrolled device is taken out of compliance after it's enrolled. So for example, if a device is jailbroken or rooted after mobile device management is installed, you'll get an alert. If the agent is removed, you'll get an alert. If you change the operating system to an unsupported version, either a minimum or a maximum version, you'll get an alert. Now this top bullet point goes back to the point I was mentioning about wiping devices. Advanced mobile device management solutions give you selective data wipe. So what that means is that either you can have a nice containerized area where all of your business data is located, which you can fully encrypt that container, and you can wipe that container independent of any other data on the phone. So if you do a wipe on that device, you can actually just wipe just the business data that you control. Or if you don't want to go for the full encrypted container method, an advanced mobile device management will allow you to just pull data off of the phone that the agent puts on. So if the agent deploys a mobile email configuration, when you do a selective wipe, the agent will only pull that off. This is very, very important in a bring your own device model because you can now control those devices and have your business data in an area that you control while allowing the employee flexibility to do whatever they want with the device. Advanced mobile device management solutions also allow you mobile app deployment, updating, and removal policies. So you actually have your own app store in a way. You can control business apps without having to send them into the proper app store. You can update apps, remove apps, deploy apps, however you need to. And also, similarly, you can apply configuration policies to those mobile apps. So if you're deploying a business app that needs to have certain features enabled or certain features of the phone enabled, such as GPS, you can do that. And as I alluded to before, you can have mobile content management in protected workspaces, a containerized, encrypted area. That will allow you to wipe the device and maintain security over your data by while giving the employee complete flexibility. Or you may want to have this encrypted container on a company-owned device where you still have that nice containerized lockdown area, and then you can just lock down the features of the phone outside of that so that employees can't install other applications. All right, so we've covered a lot of material today, so I'm going to give you a bit of a summary here. So we started by describing some solutions that can help mobilize building trades. Then we described some of the decisions you have to make before you run down a mobility solution path. What devices? What mobile ownership model? How will I manage all these new and varying computing devices? So I'm going to present to you here our 10 commandments of mobile strategy. Number 1, start with a business problem. I can't emphasize this one enough. I want to use iPads in my business is not a business problem, and it's not a mobile strategy. Figure out what problem you're trying to solve, and then work with an expert or gain the expertise to figure out how to solve that problem. You may find that the best solution to your problem is iPads. You may find it's Android devices. Number 2, create a policy before procuring technology. So to effectively leverage mobile device management technology, you need to decide on policies. And they affect more than just IT. They have implications for HR, legal, security, any part of the business that uses mobile devices in the name of productivity. Since all business units are affected by BYOD policy, it can't be created in an IT vacuum. So some questions to consider, for example, what mobile devices will be supported? Only certain devices or whatever the employee wants. Data plans, will the organization pay for the data plan? Will you issue a stipend to employees, or will the employee submit an expense report? Compliance, what regulations govern the data your organization needs to protect? For example, HIPAA requires native encryption on any device that holds data subject to the Act. What security measures are needed? What apps are forbidden? IP scanning, data sharing, Dropbox, you can do that with a good mobile device management solution. Number 3, never put sensitive business data on a mobile device that you don't manage. I'm not even going to expand on that one because that one should be pretty self-explanatory. If you put sensitive business data on a mobile device that you don't manage, expect to lose control of that data. Number 4, hold personal data sacred. I think I've beaten this one up quite a bit as well by saying you need to make sure you do not wipe personal data at in order to protect the business. If it's a BYOD policy, you need to assume that you cannot do that. So make sure that you hold the personal data from the employee sacred and protected. Kind of a carry on to that one. Number 5, keep personal and business data separate. When possible, use application or MDM solutions that allow you to separate out business data into a specialized container that you have complete control over. That way the employee's data and your business data are completely separate from each other, and you have complete control over what you need to control. Number 6 is very important for any project. Pilot the mobile solution before deployment. Yes, it does mean you're throwing some costs to something you don't know is going to work. But better to spend a few $1,000s on a solution to find out a solution isn't going to do what you need, or it's not going to pass user acceptance, or it's not going to tie into your back-end system, than going full in and then having to figure out what to do with all this money you just spent or trying to get a refund. Take a few employees, key employees from different business units if necessary, form a team, and create a small controlled pilot of the solution before you go full bore and buy it. 7, regulations matter. Again, one that I shouldn't have to expand on too much. If you are in a regulated industry, such as SEC regulations or HIPAA, make sure you understand those regulations and how they impact mobile access. Number 8, have a support plan in place for your mobile users. If you think BYOD means you no longer have to provide tech support to employees that use their own devices, think again. They're going to be asking for support, and you're going to have a lot more devices to support. Make employees accountable. Have the employees review a written BYOD policy or COD policy and require a signature as acknowledgement of the rules and the required compliance to participate in the program. Finally, gain the expertise before making decisions or partner with an expert. That's why we're here. We're trying to give you this information and some expertise, and if you want to look at what devices to buy or which workforce automation solution to look at, what kind of a mobile device management solution you need, we can help with that. So let me loop back to that question that you got via poll early on. Now that we've talked about this, do you have a mobile strategy? You may be thinking, I thought I had one, but maybe I don't. So finally, of course, this is why we're here. We want to tell you a little bit about Colden Company. We've given you a lot of information, and we can help you with everything I talked about. Whether it's basic or advanced MDM solutions, we have a product that can help you out. We have extensive knowledge on all the mobile platforms that I discussed. We can advise on or sell mobile devices. Advising on, if you have a relationship with a carrier, then we can advise you on which devices are good buys or not. If you're looking for tablets, we can actually help you acquire those. Job site connectivity options. We have extensive experience with doing wireless bridging, with doing cellular connections, with doing VPNs, site-to-site and client. We can help you with all those options. Secure Enterprise Cloud File Sync. We have an excellent partner with a leading provider that does a proper enterprise, secure, encrypted end-to-end file sync solution. Do you want some help creating those written policies? We can help you with that as well. And then the big one, going down to piloting and finding or working with an expert. Mobility project lifecycle management, from helping you understand the business requirements through deployment, through all the phases of project management, initiation, functional and technical design, develop, user acceptance testing, deployment, closing. We want to help you be able to get a proper mobile solution that will actually work for your business deployed. So I want to thank you for your time and open it up to some questions and hopefully some answers now too. Jerry, have we gotten any questions?
Yeah, Bill, we got a couple of them. The first one is pretty much to be expected. The question is, what mobile platform do you recommend?
Well, I'm going to give you a non-answer to that one. It depends. So as I mentioned, iOS is great for simplicity and stability. Android's great for customization and flexibility. Pure Windows devices, they're great because they're great for integrating into your existing investments in Windows backend systems. But what it really comes down to is I'm going to recommend the platform that solves whatever business problem you're trying to solve. If I recommend Apple devices and you're trying to work with a platform, you're trying to VPN into a system that just doesn't have an Apple iOS app, well, that's not a good recommendation. So the best mobile platform is the one that we can determine will actually solve your business problems.
Okay. The next question is sort of a follow-on to the first one, which is asking, are any of these mobile devices specifically designed to stand up to use in the field?
Well, for Apple, no, because Apple famously is the only company that will make Apple iOS devices. For Android and Windows, there are manufacturers that make ruggedized devices that stand up to drops in moisture, but they tend to be more fringe manufacturers that do specialty devices, and support may be a little more lacking. What I recommend is purchasing more of the best-of-breed devices like the Samsungs, the Apples, obviously the Apples, or Dell, one of these manufacturers, but then going with a provider that actually makes cases that are specifically designed for rugged use like OtterBox. That way you get the best of both worlds. You get ruggedized protection, even for the screen in most cases, from a company that actually knows how to make that kind of cases while still getting a good device that's going to get good support.
Great. And then we got one more, which I guess kind of speaks to the environment that some of our customers are working in, which is how can I use this solution in areas with poor cell signals or no internet connection at all?
Well, if you have a job trailer nearby, you may not have good cell signal, but if you have a job trailer that has wired internet connectivity, then we can still use one of these wireless bridges to extend that signal out to maybe a location closer to the work area. But if you have no connectivity at all and just no good connectivity options, which isn't all that unexpected in maybe new construction locations where infrastructure hasn't been built up, most good enterprise applications will actually allow employees to work in an offline mode so that they're making changes, entering data on their smartphone or tablet or laptop, hybrid, whatever it is. And the next time they're actually in a position where they have connectivity, they can upload that data to the back-end system and sync it back to the enterprise. And that, again, eliminates the need for windshield time because they're not driving back to the office. They could go to a local Starbucks and VPN in, or they can go home and use their home internet connection. So we're not requiring them to drive back to the office.
Okay, that sounds great. And that is all the questions that have come in at the moment.
Okay. Well, then I want to thank everybody for your time. Up here for the past couple of minutes, you've seen some different ways of contacting us. You can always call us at 888-600-4560, or you can reach us at info@coldencompany.com or sales@coldencompany.com. So thanks very much for your time, and we'll talk to you at our next webinar.